Hi everyone, it's Thursday night. How are you doing? I hope everyone is doing well. We're going to talk about Basic Machine Trapunto, which is a quilting technique. And what Trapunto means is it just simply means stuff work. So you're stuffing something. I'm not sure where the word exactly came from, but it's really fun to do, and it really can make what you're doing stand out and go from ordinary to wow. Okay, so anyway, it was done traditionally where let's just take well, here's one. Here's Basic Machine Trapunto. It is actually what we're going to be doing is called Faux Trapunto, and what Faux Trapunto means that it's not true Trapunto, which in the old days, and if you ever go check out antique quilts, that you see this Trapunto, this extra stuffed work, that if you would look on the back, how they used to do it is you would quilt the whole thing. It was usually done by hand. And then you would take little slits in here and take some kind of wadding, batting, or some kind of stuffing long before polyfill, so it had to have been cotton. And you would take a wooden stick and you would stuff it in there, make it nice and tight, and then you would whip stitch it closed. Problem with that is you had all these little stitches closed on the back, and that wasn't too pretty. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to do it, they call it Faux Trapunto because it's going to achieve the same thing without having to do a lot of hand sewing and holes in the back of your quilt. And so you can do any kind of design. You want to usually pick a design that's fairly thick, you know, big. You don't want teeny tiny lines. So you want to pick a design that's fairly big. Anything will work. Feathers, if you can do feathers, they're absolutely gorgeous. Any kind of design, wreaths, flowers, you name it. I've got some examples of some different kinds. So anyway, this is the traditional, and this is the one we usually do when we would do a full-on Trapunto class. And you just took this pattern. Now what makes this not only stand out is the fact that it's stuffed, but the fact that you've heavily quilted the background so that it punches it down really tight, and therefore it really makes the pattern stand out a lot. It doesn't have to be white on white. That's what this one looks like. Let me see if I can stand back here so you can see sort of the whole thing. So this one was done a lot of years ago, 2007. So this was made a long time ago. So that's this one. This one was done a long time ago. This was a prototype of one of my show quilts. That in fact, this is the full queen size version of this one is actually got a second place ribbon in Houston at the International Quilt Festival, and this is where I was testing the pattern, testing the design. This is called threaded wedding ring because this isn't fabric, this is all embroidery that I digitized myself. So it was a wedding ring pattern. And then I did Trapunto and little parts of it. See, there's some here just to make it stand out. And you can probably see it a little better from the back. So you can see where it's stuffed really thick all the way through. Okay, so that was that one. But, well, this is a form of shadow Trapunto. And see how you see color? This is all Trapuntoed areas, and you're seeing color show through, and we'll talk about how it's done. This is also called Yarn Trapunto, which is another whole different way of doing it. This is my one and only ever hand quilted piece. I don't want to do this again. So we're going to do a simple pattern. I'm going to use my long arm today because I just want to. But you could do this on any machine. Maybe next week I'll do it on my Jane. I could do it on any machine that will give you a straight stitch. You can do free motion quilting on it. You could also do this. There is Trapunto by Embroidery machine. The principles are the same whether you're doing it by hand or it's done on an embroidery machine. Just pretty much the same. And you can take like any quilting pattern or any open applique pattern and turn it into trapunto. Okay, so anyway, what you're going to need is, of course, your top fabric. You're going to need a thick batting. I like to use, this is the only time that I will use polyester batting. Get the thickest stuff you can get. Excuse me. You can use thinner, but you want the thick high loft stuff. You don't need very much of it, so just buy a craft size thing of super high loft polyester batting, and it'll last you a long time. You could also use a thinner polyester or a wool, or so. I don't do wool, I don't like touch wool. So, but you just do 2 layers because this is a whole lot thinner. In fact, you can see through it. So you could always put 2 or 3 layers of this together. And I think this super extra heavy loft is the equivalent of having 4 layers of a thin one together, but you could use 4 layers. It seems like an awful lot, but once you start stitching, it's going to smash out. Okay, you're going to need to have wash away thread. I like to use, there's Superior, and we have this in the store, just not in these big cones. This is called Vanish Extra by Superior Threads. There's a Vanish and there's a Vanish Extra. The Vanish is fine. It breaks a lot. It's easier to remove. That's the advantages. I like it not to break so much. So therefore, I like to use the Vanish Extra by Superior Threads. YLI also has a wash away thread, which is another very good one. And this one is also a wash away extra. So you could use either kind. When you have this, you need to store it in a Ziploc bag because it's going to get brittle. It does break a lot, but that's okay. We're not keeping it forever. It's temporary. It's for basting, so that's fine. You could use applique scissors to cut. I don't care for applique scissors. I like scissors that have a blunt nose, because when you're trimming away the extra batting, you don't want, I don't like to use the really sharp ones like this, because I tend to cut all the way through and make holes in the fabric. So I can use that. A curved scissor would work too. And you want a scissor that's going to cut all the way to the tip, because you guys have little angles to stitch in, and so therefore you want it to cut all the way through. And oddly, is the ones that came with my machine have been sharp for a long time, and I really like these. And I've traced out the design fairly deeply so you can see it. Okay, so here's my design. You want to take something that's fairly big. You don't want to use tiny detail in here because you want to be able to see it. It's got to be able to bloom out. So what I did was I traced it, and I'm going to put some of this underneath, and I need it to just cover the design. I don't need to have a whole lot here. Okay, and I got some extra. I'll just move this out of here. I don't need a lot. I don't throw this stuff away because I even like add it together to make, when I'm doing little tiny thin spaces or little tiny bits. And I'll show you some next week where you can take little pieces and get a lot done. Okay, so it's covering. Okay, I'm going to take some pins here, and I'm just going to pin the layers. So what I'm using is simply the batting, the polyester batting, and the top. No back at this part at all. Okay, that's enough. You don't want to spray. Do not spray baste, because you're going to have a hard time pulling the batting away from the design when you're ready to cut it. Okay, there we go. Okay, and I have the line, and I'm not going to be that upset if you miss the line. Who cares? It's going to go away. What I've done is I put regular thread in my bobbin, and I have the wash away thread in the needle here. Always run a test to see if it's working well. You don't have to put wash away thread in both your bobbin and in your needle. One's fine, because when you're all done, it's going to stay inside the batting anyway. And then we're going to quilt it. Now, I'm not going to do all this quilting, okay? I have to make a decision what I want here to stand out. I want this feather part. These are called hook feathers. I want the center to stand out. I want the stem and the leaves. But these inside, if I want them really super flat, I'm going to have to cut them out. But like, I'm way not going to do that. I'm going to super quilt these down so that they will really stick. So here's what you want to do. See the outline? I want to stitch just inside of that line. Okay, so I'm not going to sew right on the blue pattern line. I'm going to sew just inside of it. And I'm not going to have to do all this because these inside here I'm going to smash down. So I'm just going to start here. Pull my bobbin thread up because that's just good habit. And you're going to probably loosen this tension a lot. And that'll help cut down on some of the breaking. You also want to loosen, and I'm using bottom line thread, which is a really thin thread in my bobbin. Okay, and now I'm just going to stitch on this outline. And I want to do it at a fairly moderate pace. I'm not going too fast. I'm not going to worry that that's perfect either. Because say if I goof, you know what, I can just come back. Say if I go too far in, like whoops, okay, come back out. I'm not even going to take it out. If it's inside the design, who cares? And yes, when I'm doing this, I go kind of slow. Like I said, I want to go about anywhere from a 16 to, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Don't want to go there. That's okay, I'm not taking it out. It'll just wash away. It's all on the inside. To clip it out. Okay, so you can see right here it's nice and close. One thing, I think at club last week we talked about using a tower gauge for my bobbin. It's made all the difference in the world because now I'm not trying to stitch with too tight of a bobbin. Okay, so now I'm going to take the pins out because I don't need them. And one more. Okay, so then what you want to do is put, let's see, you can see that. You want to put your fingers right up against where you're going to cut. I'm just going to pick a spot and I'm going to start to clip. Okay, then what I usually like to do is take my scissor, and I'm using pointed ones. It's easier to use blunt ones. You don't have to, if you stitched far enough in, you don't, let me take, there. Let's get some of this out of the way so we can see. Okay. I'm putting my finger underneath so I can feel if I happen to cut through, which would not be a good thing. And see, my point is getting caught, and that's annoying. So if I use these blunt ones, they're not going to, see there's the blunt side, it's not going to get caught. And see, I'm just going to cut away. You can cut away pretty broadly at first to get most of this bulk out of the way and then come back. Okay, and that's usually when I get the sharper scissors, and I'm just going to cut right along here. And I can feel if I'm going through. You don't want to cut your stitches out, just let them go. And see? I'm inside. My stitching is going to capture this stuff. That's why you don't have to go too close, because you want a place for some of this batting to show through or to catch. And guess what happens you do if you end up cutting your fabric? Just keep going. Just stitch outside of it and stitch double lines in that area. No one will see that you clipped the fabric. See, these blunt ones won't go in this tight space. That's as far as it'll go. I'll come back. Okay, there, it's all trimmed away. Okay, see how it's all trimmed away? And now we're going to put our real quilt sandwich together. This time I'm going to use my Aurifil. And am I going to be real careful? No. Just need a piece big enough. And some yellow cotton on the back. Okay. And now I'm going to change to regular thread. I'm going to pull this through and rethread my needle, and I'm going to run a test. Because remember, I was using wash away thread, and it may not be enough tension on the needle to give me a balanced stitch. So let's just give it a test. Okay, and I have a test piece over here. Okay, and I'm just going to test it and see what kind of stitch I get. Too loose. Now it's too loose. So I'm going to set this up to 340, which is a little higher. And let's just see what it looks like. What I'm looking for is loops. I don't want to see loops on the back. Okay, alrighty, we're good to go. So now I have my trapunto here. And the first thing I'm going to do is just stabilize it. I'm going to start on the leaf section. That's probably about all I'm going to get to today, is the leaf section. I'll just do the outline for now. Now this is what I like to use instead of gloves. I hate gloves. So these are Rubbermaid drawer liner things, and they grip, and I can let go of them and do anything else I need to do. Not inhibiting what I'm doing. I have gloves and I hate them. Okay, now see how this looks? I would do the same thing inside of here. But then what makes this really pretty, and I'm just going to do regular stippling on the outside. And a lot of times I will like echo, like do 1/8 of an inch outside the line just to emphasize it a little bit. I do like to do trapunto work in with this open toe foot so I can see better. And now I'm just going to stipple. One wide. Then you want to smash down the background, because the more you can smash down the background, the better your trapunto pattern looks. I didn't even check the tinsel on the regular thing. That's looking good. Oh, I'm telling you, this thing has made all the difference in the world. They are pricey, but well worth it. I haven't been nearly as aggravated with my tension since I got it. This gives you an idea how well that looks. Anyway, Lily and I've been doing this a little while. It gets faster. It takes practice a little bit every day. It doesn't have to do a lot, just maybe 15, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, and practice every day. And you will find, in fact, why I have this machine is because that Elagio got to be too slow and it was annoying me. Then I went to the Baby Lock, my straight stitcher, which is now called the Achieve or something. I forgot what it's called. It used to be called the Jane. Mine's called the Quilters Pro. I've had it for almost 20 years now. And it was faster, okay? Now you work on that so long and it's starting to be too slow. That's when you know I had a long arm. I had an A1. Hated using it. There was nothing wrong with the machine. There was nothing wrong with the frame, but it hurt my back every time I used it. My friend has an APQS Millennium where the table rises and lowers with just a button, so you can put it. We've tried it at all heights. Nothing worked. After 10 minutes, my back is in pain. Of course, now I know I have a herniated disc, so I got rid of the long arm. Now I have the Baby Lock Tiara, which is a sit-down long arm, and it's now been replaced by the Regent, and the Regent is really nice because it has the regulation built into the table, which is easier to use than what I have. In fact, I don't even know where it is. There's a puck that you use that reads the table, so as you move fast, it speeds up, but I find it a pain in the neck, and after a while, you just get used to it. Another thing I didn't like about the long arm is because I call this push and shove quilting. I have my hands on it and I'm pushing and shoving it around. With experience, you can tell just by the feel of the fabric and how it pulls back and forth whether your stitches are too big, your stitches are too small. You're hearing it, you're feeling it. You can tell in your hands where the tensions are off. I can feel those tensions because I'm feeling a funny pull that I know is not supposed to be there. So when you're with a long arm, like doing this, you lose all connection with feeling with that quilt. Because I can tell when my needles are getting dull. I can tell when the tensions aren't right. I can tell when the stitches are too big or too small, just in the way that it feels and the way it moves. And so you get to know it, and then after a while, you don't need regulation anymore because it'll become even. And actually, it is pretty even, really. So anyway, I don't know how well you can see this stitching here. They look pretty even to me. Like I said, once you get your pace, you can tell. And you can see whether your stitches are right. And look, you can see the tensions on the back are just right. And the front. Those aren't bad. You know, if it needs to be more perfect than this, I'll do it on the embroidery machine. I can get perfect stitches with that embroidery machine. It's awesome. Now the process you would do for when you're doing embroidery trapunto. We will pretend that this is stabilizer. But the no-show mesh is really, really thin. And does your design have to be digitized for trapunto? Not necessarily. As long as it has a clear, clean outline stitch, you're fine. You can use it. So I would hoop my stabilizer. Then put my, then once it does like the outline, just like you do an applique, you would put your batting on the top of your hoop, just on the stabilizer. Okay, and then you'd have to do all of those shapes, trim them away, then put your top fabric down, and then it will do the stitching on top of it. So I mean, it's like doing it in reverse of regular pure Trapunto. But you can see this is going, and then once you this is water soluble, so if I spritz it away, you will no longer see the marks, and it's going to look really good. So I will finish this up. Does anyone have any questions? I'd like everybody to try it. If you don't have heavy polyester batting, just use 2 or 3 layers. Put it together. Try it. It's really easy. Even try it on your embroidery machine if you're not comfortable with free motion quilting. These are fabulous in borders, and they will think you are a genius if you put something like this in the border, because that's what I did with this one. Okay, here's the quilt. There's only Trapunto in the border, and it sets off a wow factor without being overly complicated. This is easy to do. It really is easy, and you don't have to be a perfect. Well, you know what? None of this has to be perfect. As my mother said, only God is perfect, and you shouldn't be so presumptuous as to try to be God. You know? So try it. And you'll be surprised. I think you'll surprise yourself on how elegant it looks. It's just very elegant, and it looks fabulous with tone on tone. You guys have a great week, and I will see you next Thursday. Bye.